What if the Pell Grant could hand you up to $7,395 a year for college that you never have to pay back, and you walked right past it because you assumed you earned too much to qualify? That single assumption is one of the most expensive guesses in American life, and it is usually wrong. Here is what we are covering, and the part nobody warns you about. We will define what the Pell Grant is and why it is a grant and not a loan. Then we meet the new Student Aid Index that decides your award, bust the too much income myth, and show you how to file the one free form that unlocks it. In our last guide, we covered SNAP food benefits, and today we move from the grocery aisle to the classroom.
Sara here. The piece that stuns people is that this is not a loan and not a scholarship you compete for. It is a federal grant, so if you qualify, the money is yours and it does not have to be repaid the way a student loan does. You file one free application and the system decides your award.
Lewis here, and the qualifying bar is far wider than the myth suggests. The grant is aimed at undergraduates with financial need, but need is calculated through a formula that considers family size and circumstances, not just the single income number that scares people off before they even start.
Beth here, and the cruelest part is the default. If you never file the form, the answer is automatically no, and that no costs you the full award you might have received. The form is free, so the only thing standing between many families and thousands of dollars is a guess they made without checking.
And think about the scale of that mistake, Beth. A recurring question we hear is whether filing is even worth the trouble for an ordinary middle-income family. Over a 4-year degree, the maximum Pell adds up to nearly $30,000 you never repay, which dwarfs the hour it takes to fill out the form.
So that is the promise of this episode. By the end, you will know what the grant is, how the new formula decides your number, and exactly how to file for free without paying a middleman a single dollar. Let us start with what a Pell Grant actually is, because the word grant is doing a lot of quiet work.
Let us define the word grant clearly, because that one word is the whole point. A grant is money the federal government gives you for school that you keep. It is not a loan that accrues interest, and it is not money you pay back after graduation. The Federal Pell Grant specifically is a need-based grant for undergraduate students who have not yet earned a bachelor's degree. It is funded by the United States Department of Education, and it is the single largest source of federal grant money for college in the country.
Give people the real numbers, Sara, because the abstract version never lands. For the 2026 to 2027 award year, the maximum Pell Grant is $7,395, and the minimum award is $740.
Exactly, Lewis. That maximum has held steady from the prior award year, so it is not a moving target you have to chase. Think of it like a coupon that does not expire mid-year. The full award is the same whether you file in autumn or wait until spring.
And here is a point a lot of people miss. The Pell Grant is not only for traditional 4-year universities. It works at community colleges and at many career and trade schools, so someone training to be a welder or a nurse can use it just like someone headed to a state university.
Beth names a key point, and it widens who should be paying attention. The core requirements are simple. You generally need to be a citizen or an eligible non-citizen. You must be working toward your first bachelor's degree, and you have to maintain satisfactory academic progress once you are enrolled.
And the award scales with how you attend, which trips people up. A full-time student can receive the full annual maximum, while a half-time student receives a proportional share of it. So part-time enrollment does not erase the grant, it simply sizes the award to your course load for that term.
This is where the costly mistake hides. Some families skip the grant entirely and reach straight for a student loan because a loan feels faster or more familiar. But a loan has to be repaid with interest, and a Pell Grant does not. Borrowing before you have claimed free grant money is paying for what you could have gotten for nothing.
That ordering point matters so much, Lewis. The smart sequence is grants first, then work-study, then loans only for what is left. A Pell Grant sits at the very top of that stack because it is the one source you never repay. Now the obvious question is how the system decides your number, and that is where the Student Aid Index comes in.
So how does the government turn your family's finances into a dollar award? It runs a single number called the Student Aid Index, and that number is the engine behind your Pell Grant. Everything about your award flows from it. When you complete the FAFSA, the system pulls in your income and your assets and your family size. The letters stand for the free application for federal student aid. It runs all of that through a federal formula and produces your Student Aid Index, your SAI for short.
Translate that into how the award is built, Lewis, because the mechanics decide the money. The school roughly takes the maximum Pell Grant and subtracts your Student Aid Index from it. So the lower your index, the closer you land to that full $7,395 award.
Right, Beth. So picture the index like a dimmer switch on the grant. Imagine a student whose Student Aid Index comes back at 2,000. Subtract that from the maximum and the award lands near $5,400. A lower index turns the grant up, and a modest enough income can hit the full maximum outright.
And here is a feature people find surprising. The Student Aid Index can actually go negative all the way down to negative 1,500. That negative range is the formula's way of flagging the very highest need students, the ones who should get the full grant plus a priority claim on other aid.
There is a hard ceiling on the other end, though, and it is worth knowing. For this award year, if your Student Aid Index lands at $14,790 or higher, you are over the line and receive no Pell Grant. That cutoff is exactly twice the maximum award.
And there is a shortcut built into the formula that helps the lowest income families. If a household's income falls below a certain threshold and they meet a few basic conditions, the student is awarded the maximum Pell automatically. In that case, the index is not even subtracted, the full award just applies.
So hold those two markers in your head. A negative index points to the full award plus extra help, and an index at or above 14,790 closes the Pell door. Almost everyone real falls somewhere in that wide middle, which is exactly why the income myth we tackle next is so misleading.
Now to the myth that costs the most money, the belief that there is a magic income number above which you simply do not qualify. There is no such single number, because the formula never looks at income alone. It weighs your whole situation.
That is the exact assumption that costs people the most, Beth. People hear one income figure from a neighbor or a quick online tool and treat it as a wall. The real formula is far more forgiving than that single number suggests.
Two families can report the exact same income and end up with completely different results. One might have a larger household or different assets that the formula accounts for. So the Student Aid Index for one can qualify while the other does not. Income is only one ingredient in a much bigger recipe.
Make that concrete, Beth, because the abstract version never sticks. Imagine two households that each earn $60,000 a year. One is a single parent with one child heading to college, and the other is a married couple with no other dependents. The formula can hand those two very different indexes off the same salary.
Right, and that is why the salary alone tells you almost nothing. The first household spreads its resources across more people and faces a different living cost picture. So the number that decides the grant is the index the formula builds, not the paycheck figure that families fixate on and panic over.
And the rules behind that recipe were recently rebuilt, Beth, which is a big reason the old myth is now even more wrong. The FAFSA Simplification Act replaced the old measure called the Expected Family Contribution with the new Student Aid Index, starting with the 2024 to 2025 award year.
One specific change really matters here. The old formula divided your family's expected contribution by how many children were in college at once. The new Student Aid Index removed that division entirely. Families with several kids in school at the same time felt that change the most.
Now here is where I would push back a little because it is not all good news for everyone. Removing that number in college adjustment actually raised the index for some larger families, so a household with 3 kids in college at once could see a higher index than under the old rules.
That is a factor analysis of information risk pushback, Beth, and it resolves like this. The official analysis found that roughly 3/4 of filers ended up with a lower index than their old expected contribution, while a smaller share saw a higher one. So most people came out ahead. But the only way to know your own result is to actually run the form.
Agreed, and that is the honest takeaway. The change helped most people and hurt a few, which is exactly why guessing is a losing game. You cannot eyeball whether you are in the 3/4 who gained or the slice who did not. Only the actual calculation knows your number.
So please retire the magic income number in your head. There is no salary that automatically rules you out. The formula was rebuilt in your favor for most filers, and the worst possible move is to disqualify yourself for free. The way you stop guessing is to file the FAFSA, so let us walk through doing that without paying anyone. So let us actually file this thing because the form is the only door to the grant. The first and most important word in FAFSA is the word free. Completing and submitting it costs nothing, and you should never pay anyone for the form itself. You file at the official federal site, studentaid.gov. There are lookalike sites and services that will happily charge you a fee to fill out a government form that is free, so go straight to the official source and bookmark it.
Walk through the steps, Erica, because people freeze at a blank form. First, you create your account and verify your identity. Then the form lets you pull your tax information in directly, which means you are not hunting for old returns line by line. That import step removes most of the pain people dread.
Before you sit down, gather a few things and the form goes quickly. You want your social security number and your tax return from the relevant year. You also want records of any untaxed income plus your bank and investment balances. A dependent student needs the same details for a parent, which is the part that surprises first-time filers.
And mind the deadlines, because there are really 3 layers of them. There is a federal deadline. Your state has its own, and it is often much earlier, and each school can set its own priority date too. When in doubt, treat the earliest one you can find as your target and beat it.
And one practical tip that quietly matters. When the form asks which schools to send your information to, list every school you are even considering, not just your top choice. Each school you list receives your data and can build an aid offer, and adding one is free and takes seconds.
There is a timing angle too. While the Pell Grant itself is awarded to everyone who qualifies, some other aid that the FAFSA also unlocks is limited and handed out first come, first served. So filing early in the cycle protects your shot at those extra dollars beyond Pell.
And that connects to the bigger picture we keep coming back to. The same FAFSA that decides your Pell Grant also feeds work study and the FSEOG grant for the highest need students, plus your federal student loans. We have separate guides on each of those that pick up right where this one leaves off.
So treat the FAFSA as one key that opens several doors at once. You fill out a single free form. It positions you for grants you keep, for a campus job, and for the lowest cost loans if you still need them. Tell us in the comments whether anyone ever talked you out of filing, because we read those and turn them into episodes.
If you forget everything else in this video, remember this. The Pell Grant can be worth up to $7,395 that you never repay. No single income number rules you out, and the only way to claim it is the free FAFSA at the official site. So file it, list your schools, and let the formula decide instead of guessing. Here is your one-sentence summary. The Pell Grant is up to $7,395 you never repay. Your award is the maximum minus your student aid index, and the only way to find your number is the free FAFSA. A year from now, you will thank yourself for filing instead of guessing yourself out of free money.
My favorite takeaway is that a grant is not a loan. It is money you keep, so claim it before you borrow.
Mine is the student aid index. Think of it as a dimmer switch, where a lower index turns your grant up toward that full maximum.
And mine is the myth. There is no magic income that rules you out, so check before you ever count yourself out.
This is Professor Erica. Thanks for watching and signing off.